All right, good morning, everyone. It is 10 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. It's kind of slow moving at first anyway, as we let everybody kind of get back into the, there's a couple more, into the webinar. Just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Jen Wade. I'm the Grants Division Director at OPB. I've got on with me Jonna, who is our Grants Division Manager, and Amanda Hawkins is on here as well. So again, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. We are here today to talk about the Public Safety and Community Violence Reduction Grant. If you guys can see my presentation, if you would just do a quick thumbs up so I know everybody can see it. Perfect. Great. So today we're going to go over the program overview. We're going to talk about the application. We're going to look at eligibility criteria, review criteria, and then go over any questions that you guys have on this grant. And it is going to be recorded today. So we will have this up on our website over this week for you to revisit and for anybody who could not make it today. The program total allotted to this grant is going to be $100 million. The application for this is available on our website. We have a link that is through the website that you can click on. It'll take you straight over to our program page for all of our available grant applications that we have. This grant application opened on September 1st and will go through November 18th, 2022. We wanted to hold off on the webinar, give folks that 3-day weekend to get back, get fresh, and then kind of go over the criteria, give you a chance to peruse the website and the eligibility outlined on there. For applicants, those who are eligible are going to be law enforcement agencies, units of local government, counties, cities, etc., and then state agencies. This will be a traditional reimbursement method. So these funds will be made available for the payment request for your reimbursement for eligible activity along the project period. You can take a look at our post-award FAQs that we have on our For Grantees page for more information on what that looks like from a traditional reimbursement standpoint, the supporting documentation that you have to upload, as well as any other requirements for that. Just wanted to bring this up as well for additional requirements for eligibility. All applicants must have and maintain active registration in SAM.gov and have a unique entity identifier. You have to have that upon application submission. And then you will also, we have a verification mechanism so that we will be checking to ensure that it is active and current. And if it ever ceases to be active, your payments will be stopped. So in order to even get to that point where you're requesting payments, we have to have that. And then again, if it's not active or it's not kept up to date, then we cannot process the payments without it, because that is how we have to report all the payments for these state fiscal recovery funds. So for the program overview, this grant funding is to address violent gun crime and community violence that has increased as a result of COVID-19 or been exacerbated by it, or to address a decrease in public sector law enforcement staffing as a result of COVID-19, using one of 4 program areas. You can do law enforcement staffing, and we'll get to the nuts and bolts of that in just a second. Violent crime reduction programs, equipment and technology, and community violence intervention programs. And I did want to note that if you are putting applications in for programs that cover multiple program categories, those should be submitted in separate applications. In tranche 1, we did, water, sewer, broadband, negative economic impact, and we did ask for the scopes aligned to put those in one application. But because the scopes would be different for, law enforcement staffing versus community violence intervention programs, for example, we do ask that if you're putting those in and there's no scope alignment, to please put those in with different applications, because again, that need has to be demonstrated for how that problem that you are identifying in the application comes back to COVID-19, violent gun crime, and community violence that have been increased due to the pandemic. All ARPA applicants must have an organization or subrecipient that will serve as the fiduciary agent and assume overall responsibility for the grant. So one of the biggest questions we get is, can I partner? Can we have partnering agencies, et cetera? And the answer is yes. You may put an application in for partnerships. However, the person that is submitting the application will be the subrecipient. So that would be the fiduciary responsibility. As this is a law enforcement grant, the implementing agency must be a law enforcement agency, and the affiliated unit of government will be either the municipal or county governance of a law enforcement agency. And again, we've covered the eligible applicants. And I did want to note that state agencies are not eligible to apply for program category 1, which is that law enforcement staffing. So for eligible activity under law enforcement staffing, you can do two different things. You may hire public safety employees for the same positions that you had back in January 27th, 2020, but that were either eliminated or unfilled as of March 3rd, 2021. So that's restoring it back to pre-pandemic levels. You may hire above pre-pandemic baseline. So final rule has now given us the ability to hire above pre-pandemic baseline by adjusting the pre-pandemic baseline for historical growth in the public sector employment over time. If you are choosing this option, there's a formula that's prescribed by Treasury in final rule that must be completed. We've made it very easy for you. I'll actually show you in the application. It's just a form. It does all of the calculations for you, but you will need to know what your full-time employment was dating back to that date. Again, it will calculate that for you, and then you can just submit that through your applications. We've made it very simple. So again, pre-pandemic baseline hiring or hiring over the pre-pandemic baseline with that formula prescribed by Treasury. Violent crime reduction programs are going to be evidence-based practices like focused deterrence, street outreach, violence interrupters, and hospital-based violence intervention models, complete with wraparound services such as behavioral therapy, trauma recovery, job training, education, housing and relocation services, and financial assistance. Equipment and technology, we're getting a lot of questions. Amanda, I know you've gotten a lot of questions on this category so far, and I want to reiterate this particular one. This category is going to be investments in technology and equipment that allow law enforcement to respond to the rise in gun violence more efficiently and effectively. And that is gun violence that has increased due to the pandemic. I know the slide's a little bit off in the wording, so let me just say it again. So investments in technology and equipment that allow law enforcement officers to more efficiently respond to an increase in gun violence as a result of the pandemic. Examples of this, assisting with the identification of guns whose serial numbers have been damaged. And again, when I go through the application, you'll see how all this and how you have to demonstrate alignment to COVID-19 increases in gun violence and community violence, et cetera. The fourth category, community violence intervention programs. This is going to be funding for more intervention workers, increasing pay, providing training and professional development for intervention workers, and hiring and training workers to administer those programs. Allowable costs are determined in accordance with the cost principles identified in 2 CFR 200 subpart E. Federal funds committed to an award may only be used to cover allowable costs incurred during the period of performance for eligible activity outlined by the program category in each of the allowable activity sections that I just went through. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Just a note on this one, these are forward-looking funding. So this, unlike our first tranche where we are going back to that March 3rd, 2021 date, these are forward future funds. So the project period start date are going to align to when your award moves from the awarded status to the approved status. And that means going through our onboarding process. So your program should not begin. You should not be seeking funding for something that you have already paid for. It's going to be future looking, forward looking. Just as a reminder, the policy requirements under this assistance listing, they do align to 2 CFR 200, and these are the policy requirements outlined by Treasury in the assistance listing. So again, these are state fiscal recovery funds. So all the provisions under 21.027 for 2 CFR 200 align to this. That is subpart B, general provisions, subpart Z, C, pre-federal award requirements and contents of federal awards. Subpart D, post-federal award requirements. Subpart E, cost principles. And subpart F, audit requirements. And again, all these are super important. They have to align. They are required under the federal requirements. However, I do want to highlight two of these just as you move forward in your planning for your proposals, etc. Subpart D, award requirements. This part is where the competitive procurement comes into play. So you do have to follow 2 CFR 200 guidelines on this. So you either need to bid that out competitively if you're seeking goods or services over certain thresholds, whether that's RFPs, quotes, sole source, et cetera, whatever is in alignment to your program. But all of that gets quite jargony. And so we've created a short guide for you guys. It's on the 4 Grantees website. It breaks it down by the thresholds for purchasing and then what that should look like on the other end. So what the outcome should be. So if it's, you know, the RFPs under the competitive procurement over the standard acquisition, or if it's just, you know, quotes needed, et cetera, we try to give you guys a guide to help you as you're on that path to move forward with this grant application. And then secondly, I wanted to highlight subpart F, audit requirements. Anyone receiving federal funds of $750,000 or more are required to do single audits. I know most of you have already experienced with this, but I do, again, just wanted to highlight that. All right, so moving to the scoring criteria for applications. This is a breakdown of the percentage for the scoring criteria. Your description of the issue will be 30%. The project design and implementation will also be 30%. Capabilities and competencies will be 15%. Performance measures will be 10%. And your budget will be 15%. Match funding is not required or scored in this application. So in order to see this in the application, you do need to go through the application. You can complete application tasks like your W-9, your tool for assessing risk, et cetera, on the front end, and you can kind of go back and forth. But in order to advance to the next page, to get to the nuts and bolts of the proposal narrative, you do need to input information. So if you're curious about what this looks like, I will show you in just a second, but you do need to get in there. You can put some, you know, testing information in just to get to the nuts and bolts, but I wanted to provide you guys what we're looking for in the proposal narrative to kind of assist with that. So in the description of the issue, this is where you're indicating to us what the problem is. Applicants should identify a specific problem, identify a need they seek to address, and how it aligns to eligibility outlined in the U.S. Department of Treasury's final rule and its alignment to the to this program criteria. So one of those 4. Sorry, this is a drinking water slide. Applicants must provide specifics on how their projects are needed to support the demonstration of the increased need for COVID. I think these are older slides, guys. Let me just go to the application real quick. I'm going to switch screen so I can show you guys what this looks like in the actual application. Can you guys do some thumbs up if you guys can see my screen and the application's open? Perfect. Okay, great. So this is what it will look like in we use SurveyMonkey Apply now. So this is what it will look like. And you can see I have a couple applications started or submitted here. So I'm going to go to my Public Safety and Violent Crime Reduction Strategies application. When you go into the link initially, it's going to ask you to sign up to access it. I just wanted to point out you do have to go in to verify your email address before you can move forward. So if you're getting stuck and you can't access that, it's usually the email. Okay. So once you get in, you'll see something that looks like this. Your application is on the top, and then you have these things called tasks. So again, you can kind of skip around here. You can work on your application some. You can move back through the other tasks. In addition to that application, which I'll show you here, there's the pre-pandemic baseline form that we were just talking about. And this is optional for those Program 1 category, people in the Program 1 category over pre-pandemic levels. And again, you just put in here, you identify your budgeted full-time employees on January 27th, 2020. That's your pre-pandemic baseline, so you put your number there. Step 2, it's going to just multiply that for you. Step 3, identify the recipient's budgeted FTE level on March 3rd, 2021. This is going to be your actual number of FTE, so you're going to put that here. And then step 4 is going to subtract that for you. So it's going to automatically populate. It's a very simple procedure. I just wanted you to see what it looks like if you were intending to apply to hire personnel above, hire law enforcement personnel above pre-pandemic levels. All right, let me go back. Then you have the vendor management form. It gives you all of the application instructions here. And you can go to the form and download this, fill it out, and then you go back here and attach the file. Same thing for your W-9. You click here. It gives you the instructions, tells you where to find the form, and then you would attach that, upload it back to us, and then complete that task. You have a tool for assessing risk. This is here. You would click on this, answer the questions. It's kind of in a survey form, and then attach that back. Here for the SAM.gov UEI, all you need to do here is upload a screenshot, whether it's a screen capture, you download a PDF, whatever that looks like, just showing your registration in SAM.gov. Just wanted to highlight they are they have a bit of a backlog right now. And what we've told folks is go ahead, submit today if you intend to apply for this. If you don't have a UEI, lots of units of local government already have those. Just make sure they're active because, again, you want to make sure that you're maintaining that active registration. Okay, and then you have a detailed budget worksheet. And it will, again, give you instructions on where to find that. So you click here. I'll show you what this one looks like. This is a little bit more in depth. I'm going to open up the compliance segments. Move it to my other screen so you guys can see. So this is the detailed planning worksheet that you will submit for your budget. It breaks everything down from personnel to each of the, if it's supplies, travel, etc. for each of those categories, constructions, consultants, and subawards, etc. We just ask that you're extremely detailed with this. If you have costs that are under this, they should be based on some kind of calculation, right? So they shouldn't just be like an estimate, oh, we thought it would cost this. They should be based on quotes, contractors, designs or whatever that is. It should be based off of an actual calculation. And then you will complete that, save it to your desktop or wherever in your files, and then upload it back here, and then mark that one as complete. And then for your financials, you're just going to upload your most recent external audit or financial report. So your ACFR, your audit opinion, etc. Your single audit if you already have one. And we're also going to ask that you upload a project timeline. This should be comprehensive. It should identify milestones, the funding source for each milestone. So if you do have other funding sources, we definitely want to see that on there. If it's part of the project and you're only requesting ARPA, State Fiscal Recovery Fund for a portion of this. Numerically list deliverables and indicate who is responsible for each activity. You can upload letters of support. That's completely optional, but I do want to note these have to be uploaded in the application when you submit in order to be considered. Emailing them to us or mailing them to us, it gets really hard for us to match the applicant to the application once it's in there. So we do ask that you send them in the application, attach them there if you would like letters of support to be considered. And there is something at the bottom that's called Consolidated Application PDF. That is for our use only, and it says that once you click on it, so you don't have to upload anything there. So that is optional. All right, I'm going to go through the application really quickly. And I do want to highlight, I'm just going to pull up our grant page on here, which I'm sure you guys have seen if you're interested in this project already, but if you go to more information from our homepage on grant opportunities, it'll take you to this Public Safety and Community Violence Reduction grant page. And if you click the NOFO and open this up, it gives you all the information we'll cover today, as well as this scoring criteria too, the rubric that we're going to use for scoring. And then the application has the details behind that and what we're looking for. Pull that back up and we'll go through that now. Okay, so this is what the application looks like. It's going to ask you your organization name, address, website, etc. And at the bottom, it's going to ask you for your UEI. We use that interchangeably with SAM's number. It comes from sam.gov. It is called a unique entity identifier. Again, just to reiterate, they are in a bit of a backlog. So please, if you have an intention to apply today, sign up if you don't already have a UEI. We'll also ask you to enter your tax identification number, your TIN or EIN. Let us know how many years the organization's conducted the program for which it's requesting funding, and what percentage of the organization's budget is grant funded. And again, you have to enter something in here for each of these in order to continue. So I'm just going to go through. And it does validate these, so. Okay. So here under the organization authorized representative, this is the person we are looking for who will sign your grant agreement. So whoever in your agency, organization, etc., has the signing authority. So if you have a director or a CFO that would typically sign these, that is who we would ask. So in our instance, it would be our director, Kelly Farr. A fake number in here. Oh, it's gonna keep it up. Okay. Your unique identifier number here. I think that's might be enough. We'll see. 7, 10, 12. Okay, let's say it expires tomorrow. So it's a new program. Let's say I'm 20% funded. Okay. So again, you have to have everything filled in to continue, and let's see if it validates. All right, perfect. So now we're on to project information. So you're going to answer which type of project best describes your project. So again, you have the law enforcement staffing, which is category 1, the violent crime reduction programs, equipment and technology, community violence intervention programs. The zip code location of your project performance, that should be the primary project location. So if you have a headquarters and you're doing it in multiple locations, just put that primary location in there. The dollar amount of ARPA funds requested, so not total project costs if you have other, costs or anything. Is this project new or a continuation of an existing project? So again, this could be something that you have done previously in the past, but your funds are future looking. So you should not have, we should not see anything prior to your approved award being submitted for request. But if it's something where you may have done a pilot project and you wanted to do something else or anything like that, then you would just put this if it's a continuation or existing. how many program staffs are dedicated. Let me fill this out while I'm going. Sorry, guys, I wasn't even. I'm so used to being a tester in here that I just throw it in here. So if you have additional zip codes, 30334, et cetera, you can separate them with commas. I'm going to ask for 200,000 new. So here I'm just answering the question, has the organization secured funding for an administrative staff for this project? So there's no right or wrong answer here. I just put in here just in case you guys happen to have the other federal funding. Yes, we have federal funding to cover admin staff. At this point, I have a DOJ grant to cover that. You may not, and that is okay too. How does your organization intend to sustain this program project after initial grant funds expire? So this is one-time funding. So we want to see your sustainability plan. So please make sure that you fill this out and let us know after this grant ends, if I have continuation fees. For example, if you put in a grant request for some sort of software that's going to help law enforcement officers more effectively respond to an increase in gun violence due to the pandemic, and then the grant fund ends and you still have that subscription to kind of keep up with. We want to know how you're going to continue to use that. Are you just going to stop it? Or do you have plans to use another funding source, et cetera? Just going to put test there. Okay, so here's probably the bulk of what you guys are looking for, right? So here's the application proposal narrative. You're going to title your proposal at the top. You're going to put your project start dates in. And then this should not extend beyond the program deadline, which is October 31st, 2026. You're going to put proposal summary. I see some of the chats. Sorry, they're popping up, so I'm getting a little bit distracted. But I see some of the chats are talking about like our drinking water project where there are word limits on there. And so we do have word limits on there. For your proposal summary, it'll be no more than 400 words. This is just a very concise paragraph that we're looking for. This is what will be on OPB's website once the awards are made. So we're looking for something very short. So you don't have to go in a whole lot of detail, and you shouldn't need more than 400 words for that. For the description of the issue, this section should state the problem that was caused or exacerbated by the pandemic based on the program category you're applying for. Again, so either gun violence, gun crime reduction, decrease in law enforcement staffing, etc. Provide statistics to support the problem statement that you have outlined in your narrative. So if I'm saying I want to buy X software to allow my law enforcement officers to more effectively respond to an increase in gun violence in the pandemic, then I need to show what that number was before and how it has increased during the pandemic or was exacerbated by it. So we're looking for statistics to back that up. Applicants should use January 27, 2020 as the ARPA recognized start of the pandemic. So that is from Treasury in final rule. Applicant data should demonstrate that the problem began during the pandemic or again was exacerbated by it. There's a lot of data out there, talking to our state agencies, et cetera. You can use UCR data, whatever the data is for your jurisdiction. That should show an uptick in gun violence, community violence, et cetera, whatever one you're applying for. And you should be able to describe in your jurisdiction how the pandemic caused that, exacerbated it, what the response was, and how your proposed solution to that ties into addressing the problem. And again, because this is 30%, the first two are 30%. That is the bulk of your application. And I'm going to get through all this real quick, and then we'll stop for specific questions on this because I want to make sure that we everybody kind of has this to refer back to as well. Project design and implementation. Provide a description of proposed activities and how the activities will engage with the community and any community partners that will be involved if applicable. Applicants should identify the program objectives and describe the vision for the target population, specifically how the vision will address the problem identified in the description of the issue. Again, the gun violence, the law enforcement decreased staffing, etc. Please ensure that each objective is measurable and identify strategies to achieve the objectives. And please let us know if your approach is evidence-based. Please include information on that. Provide supporting and research references in that as well. There are really great resources out there too, and if you're having some issues, we're more than happy to schedule a technical assistance call with you. Amanda on the call here is the program specialist. She has worked previously in law enforcement, as have I. We both have a background, so we are more than happy to help you. Can't write the grant for you, but we can certainly point you to, data sources that you can use and help you through that technical assistance aspect. We definitely want to make sure that, especially folks that don't have grant writers, if you need help, we can help point you to some resources. Capabilities and competencies. This is pretty standard. Applicants should demonstrate their capability to implement the project and the competencies of the staff assigned to the project to include the financial management of funding. The applicant should detail the level of support for the project, as well as the expertise of the individuals who will be responsible for managing the project. Applicants should also demonstrate their experience in managing projects with federal funding. Plan for collecting the data. So Treasury does require that we capture reporting data. It is outlined in the compliance and reporting guide on our 4 grantees website on our page. Amanda can drop the link to that in the chat as well. But we just want to make sure that you understand what's going to be required for these. We may request additional data from you guys to show some kind of decrease in gun violence that has happened because you implemented a solution for that, etc. So applicants should describe the process for measuring project performance, who will be collecting the data, who's going to be responsible for performance measurement, and how that information will be used as a guide to assess the program as you continue. Successful applicants will demonstrate understanding of performance data to be collected and reported. And again, that's going to be in that compliance guide. For each project goal, applicants should identify the criteria that will determine how and if the objectives have been successfully met, and one or more specific measurable outcomes, and the data sources that will be used to determine whether the outcome was accomplished. And then you get into the budget. We've just given you a breakdown, just a sample here. But again, all budget items must be related to the purpose of addressing the negative impacts of the coronavirus pandemic. Again, the gun violence, community violence caused or exacerbated by the pandemic. To reiterate what I said earlier, the budget must be based on quoted estimates and calculations, not rounded guesstimates. Again, because you will be required to upload that detailed budget worksheet, we're going to collect very detailed amounts from you anyway. And so we would expect that if you have a quote that you upload it along with your budget detailed narrative as well. And you have the ability to upload multiple documents in that section so that you can include quotes, invoices, etc. So here you would just put your budgeted amount. Let me see if I think I need to do this to continue. So I'm just going to put some stuff in here. Just so it doesn't ding me. Okay. So here, let's say I'm hiring law enforcement, calculate my fringe and my benefits. I'm just throwing numbers in here. These are obviously not real. Numbers in here to get to the bottom. And then I think doesn't like that comma. There we go. Okay. So to give you a total budget here. And again, here's your budget narrative. You have 500 words. Again, we're not looking for a giant narrative on this, but 500 words is enough to show how each of the estimated costs break down by line item or category in that budget. They should explain how the costs associated with each line item or category relate to the implementation of the project as outlined in the proposal being submitted. Budget narratives must explain how the costs associated with each line item or category relate to those. Let's just put an error in that. If your proposal contains multiple projects or subawards, you can provide a breakdown per project as well in your budget narrative. Again, those should only be of similar scope in that same category. If you're requesting funds outside of the same category, example, a city may say, I would like to put a proposal in for hiring law enforcement officers to pre-pandemic levels. They might also want to apply for the equipment and technology or supplies. So those will be two separate applications because you're going to have to show two different, even though the pandemic increases may line up, you would still need to break those out into two separate applications. Match funding, again, it is not scored in the application, but we want to know if you have it in here just so that we can track it along. If you have other funding sources, if you have another federal grant, again, that you may want to implement part of the program with, just put all of that in here as well. And then I would recommend clicking save and continue editing. I didn't like something that I put in here. Oh, this one. Oh, so I've got to put in between. I have to at least put in 200 words. I'm just going to hit this for a very long time, so let me go forward. One second. There we go. Okay. And then this last page is just a signature page, and it outlines again the 2 CFR 200 requirements, that it is reimbursement based. So you're just attesting that it's the applicant or would be the subrecipient's responsibility to comply with the applicable state, local, federal policy requirements, including 2 CFR 200 competitive procurement requirements. And so once you sign that, awful signature, mark it's complete. So that piece of the application is done. So then I would go, in this instance, I have not uploaded anything to my required task, so it's not going to let me submit until I do that. But again, gives you an idea of what we're looking for in the application, what is there. If you want to dive further, you can, again, go back in there, set up your application, kind of peruse that. All right, I'm going to stop sharing this, and I'm going to stop for application questions briefly. I mean, I know some folks have been in the chat. I'm going to go back to my presentation just to have it up. But if you want to open it up with the chat questions first, Amanda, that you've kind of gotten to.
So this most recent one, and then I'll work backwards. Tanya Twadell is asking for category 1 related to pre-pandemic positions unfilled on March 3rd, 2021. Is the purpose to fill positions which remain unfilled as of the start date of this grant, or to reimburse for the expenses related to the vacancies, including hiring for them?
So again, because it's forward funding, we would not be paying for positions that had previously been hired. So we would only expect to have vacant positions. It depends on which category, right? So it depends on if it's pre-pandemic levels or hiring above baseline. It depends on what calculation's been done there, but these would not be to pay for previously employed salaries. It would be forward looking.
Laquina Thomas, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing people's names. Do the organizations have to have EEOP plan in place? Meaning, do we have to comply with 28 CFR Part 42?
I'll put the slides up as well. So all of your policy requirements are linked into the slides and also on the NOFO. So if that is listed under the 2 CFR 200 requirements, that should be in there. And that's already up in the NOFO as well. That just showed. It's got all the policy requirements in there.
Carol Roberts has asked, we have vacant positions, but part of the obstacle is that we're having a hard time recruiting. Can this grant pay for a recruiter if we convert a current open patrol position?
No, it has to be law enforcement officers. I think it says it. Let me go back to the guidance. Hiring law enforcement officials. It says public safety employees though, so we could talk through that offline. If you want to get with Amanda and set up a meeting, we could talk through that because it does say hiring public safety employees, but it depends on that were unfilled or eliminated, right, as of March 3rd. If that was on an open position or was eliminated, et cetera, so we'd have to talk through that a little bit more.
And Jen, you may want to speak further on this. Multiple people have asked about how do we prove relationship to the pandemic, or what do we need to do to tie that in? And I've given a response of, well, that's the applicant's responsibility to provide that information, but you may want to speak to that further.
Correct. So it is the applicant's responsibility, but again, there's UCR data out there. There are a lot of studies that have been published now to show a correlation between the pandemic, an increase in gun crime, community violence, et cetera. So that all of your jurisdictions data that you collect, that you report for UCR data, use that, right? There's that. You can look at outside sources. There are several sources that you can use, but you have to show those statistics to show the correlation, right? The gun crime levels were X. During the pandemic, it was X, and it just keeps going, or et cetera. So there are several options. And again, if you have a specific case, you want to sit down with Amanda and I, we can talk through that and look through, some of that data. While you're looking, Amanda, I'm just going to go backwards here too. How many years could you include hiring above? Again, the funds, the project end date is October 31st, 2026.
Question from Shaquille Russell. Is it only gun violence or violence during the pandemic in general?
So if you look through each different program category, it's very specific. So in the violence crime reduction, it goes over the eligible activity on that. So it's either community, going back to the to address violent gun crime and community violence. The one that's very, very honed in specific on that is the equipment and technology, investments in technology and equipment to allow law enforcement to more effectively and efficiently respond to the rise in gun violence resulting from the pandemic. And that is taken directly from a Treasury FAQ on how we could use this for equipment and technology and public safety. That is very specific to an increase in gun violence.
How many years of funding could you ask for in funding a new position?
Again, the end date is October 31st, 2026.
I think that has us caught up on all the questions in the chat, I think.
Okay. I was trying to look through them as well, but I think you did a good job of going through them. I see someone's hand up. I just can't see who it is. If you want to just go ahead and ask your question.
I think that may have been from when you asked for a thumbs up at the beginning.
Perfect. Okay. So I'll just keep moving on. Application and award notification. All applications will be reviewed and evaluated according to the scoring criteria that we went over, priorities and preferences outlined in the notice of funding opportunity, which I showed you where that was on the website as well. All award results will be posted on OPB's website and applicants notified in writing, so you'll receive an email on that. So I just saw a question in the chat pop up too. It's also in the NOFO as well as on the website, but There's going to be $100 million available under the SNOFO, and each award will be up to 1.5 is the maximum. So for the grant agreement and terms, so if you're awarded an applicant selected for funding through the Public Safety Community Violence Reduction Strategies Grant Program that wishes to accept an award must execute the grant program terms and conditions within 60 days of the award announcements. The state will not accept proposed changes or amendments to the terms and conditions. And then failure or refusal to comply with this requirement will result in award funds being rescinded. Just wanted to cover the grant timeline. Again, that's in the NOFO, but just wanted to go over that. The NOFO was released on August 24th, and then the application began on September 1st. We are at the application virtual workshop right now, and then November 18th, the application window will close. You do have until 11:53 p.m. That is Eastern Standard Time. Just as a reminder, though, OPB staff will be available until 5 p.m. for technical assistance, and we see it all the time. We strongly encourage you not to wait to the last day, not to the last minute, because it does shut off right at that time, and we have no way to stop that. So once that application period closes, we will not have it open for any more applications. So we strongly encourage you to get it in before that last day. And if you have any technical, difficulties, just please ping us. To give us enough time to respond and troubleshoot anything with you that we need to. November 19th to December 19th, 2022 is our anticipated application review. And then we anticipate that final recommendations and preliminary awards will be announced January of 2023. And again, the date is dependent on the volume of applications we receive and the review process. As some of you are asked, and I've covered this in the beginning, but all funds must be expended by October 31st, 2026, which is the end of the performance period. The awardee may use funds under this grant to cover costs incurred beginning from the date of the award approval by OPB through that end date, October 31st, 2026. Only new projects that have not started at the time of the release of the NOFO are eligible for this program funding. Again, we've already touched on the reporting side of it. This is your compliance and reporting guidance. We'll have the link for you. It's also under our important documents as well. And it just tells you, what's going to be expected from Treasury, from us, from a reporting perspective. And again, we may ask for additional metrics just to show the correlation and the decrease in violence after funding. Let's see, subrecipients awarded funding through this grant program will be subject to audits or review by Treasury Inspector General and Government Accountability Office. All subrecipients will also undergo a subrecipient monitoring program through us, through OPB. We have a contractor that is RSM. They're phenomenal with answering any questions if you have 2 CFR questions or about, how to go about placing something for bid or a relationship that you may have with a contractor and using them, just, anything like that, that if you want to, talk through that before you apply, we're happy to facilitate that connection with RSM, or Amanda can also help you with that as well. Again, these are your program contacts. Amanda, you can reach out to the general grants box as well. Feel free to reach out to Amanda for any questions that you have. Again, we'll provide the dates for the in-person training, but until then, feel free to ping us, bounce things off of us, etc. Appreciate you guys so much. Bye.